The Scotch game may seem like a simple opening, but it is very deadly. A favorite of Garry Kasparov, the open positions lead to great attacking games. Today we're going to learn the Scotch game and play a practice game as well. Alright everybody, today we are going to be going over the Scotch Opening, one of the most classic openings, and an especially good opening for beginning players in chess, because the ideas are very simple, and the open center positions tend to lead to a position where you are able to develop your pieces very actively and create an attack. So, the Scotch Opening starts with e4 from white, and black's most classical response is e5. And here white is going to go for knight to f3, also the most common move in this position, and then following that we are going to have knight to c6, most common response here. Now there are a few different moves in this position. We've gone over a few of them, one of them being the Roy Lopez bishop b5 and the Italian bishop c4, but we are going to be playing the Scotch Opening today, and the Scotch Opening starts with the move d4 in this position. Now there are a few different ways for black to respond here, but most likely you're going to get e takes d4, and then here we play knight takes d4. And you might think, while we're exchanging pieces and pawns in the center of the board, isn't this okay for black? It leads to a pretty equal position. Yes, the Scotch game is not about playing for engine advantages. As you can see, the engine thinks white only has a slight advantage here, but practically this position is very easy to play, and you can get a strong lead in development here as white. So first of all, if your opponent takes here, you're going to take back with the queen, and proper knowledge of chess just lets you know that, hey, bringing your queen to the center of the board early is not usually a good idea. But let's look at this position very practically. Practically, the queen is creating a lot of pressure, first of all on straightforward like this, but also diagonally on this pawn here, disallowing the dark square bishop from developing, and disallowing a fianchetto as well because the rook would hang. So this queen is pretty effective at controlling the board. Not to mention, it's almost impossible to kick away without making some sort of pawn commitment. Here you can play c5 to knock the queen away, but that's going to give up the d5 square forever, and that's a square that giving it up is not certainly worth it. We'll see. We'll play this move and just let the engine tell you. The engine says white is close to winning after this move. Queen goes right back, and the knight's going to come in and start occupying this d5 square, and it's going to be nasty for black to deal with that. So this queen is pretty unassailable in the center of the board. And you can start developing your pieces to support the queen. Your bishop can come out to e3, or it can come out to f4, creating more pressure here. Your knight's going to develop likely to c3, and your light square bishop is going to come out to c4, creating pressure on the f7 pawn. And you have the option of castling short or long. Here the d-file is open, so castling long doesn't seem like a terrible idea either. So when you start seeing all these easy plans of development for the Scotch, you start to think, wow, there's a lot of flexibility. My pieces have great squares, and I can make an attack immediately. Notice how we're up a tempo here. Black is going to have to play a move to even develop their dark square bishop, but white's already ready to develop either bishop or the knight. So the flexibility in the Scotch game is one of its greatest assets, and not to mention that your pieces have plenty of great squares to go to. Now let's see what happens if you take here and your opponent doesn't play takes. They play another move. One of the most common moves being bishop to c5 here. How would you respond to this? Well, knight to b3 is a nice response. Also, knight takes c6 is a nice response as well. I like knight to b3 here. Knight to b3 is nice. First of all, you're opening up the line for the queen, and you're creating an attack on this bishop. This is a bishop that you'd like to win. Generally, in these e4, e5 positions, the dark square bishop is more valuable for black, and the light square bishop is more valuable for white. So yeah, we're going to get bishop b6 here maybe. And you can continue to develop your pieces. Queen e2 is a nice move, defending the pawn in the center of the board. But also just knight to c3, and you've got your knights both developed, active in the game. You can start running your pawn up the board even, creating more pressure for the dark square bishop. And you have a nice position where, again, your bishop's ready to be developed. Your king can go to either side. Your queen can come out at any moment to g4 and create pressure like this. So you've got lots of options, and that's what I like in these kind of positions. Options, flexibility, ways to make moves that my opponent might not expect. And a few other ideas. Sometimes what you want to do is play f3 and castle long. So we'll give you a variation where we do something like that. Say we play takes. Then our opponent, say, plays knight here. We develop our bishop. And still develop to c4, actually. Then they develop. We'll just keep developing here. Alright, opponent's going to castle. And we're going to castle long here and create what's called a kingside pawn storm. So we've castled to the opposite side of the board. What we want to do is use our pawns on our king side and start making attacks. So our ideas are going to be pushing this h pawn up the board as well as creating an advance with our g pawn. So say our opponent goes for a5, we're going to go for f3, planning on g4, h4, h5, pushing away pieces, creating an attack, and also aiming to occupy this d5 square with our knight eventually. So opponent plays like this, and we're going to keep advancing. And notice that any weakening of the pawns on the king side are going to make it so it's easier for us to open up the board. We want to lift our other rook over here and try to create an x-ray on the king as well. And notice the position's becoming more favorable for white every second. What's another move we could play? Opponent might go for fianchettoing their bishop. We go for h4. We're ready to play g5 on the next move, which is going to be nice because this knight's going to get knocked away, and our knight's going to be able to come into this d5 square, and maybe the bishop will have to trade for it. Either way, we're going to have a nice active knight in the center of the board that can't be traded. It's going to be an amazing position. And our rooks are going to be opened up soon. As soon as these pawns start getting to the king's side, they are going to break open the king's defenses, and the rooks will be there to exploit it. So these are a few of the ideas in the Scotch game. And now I would like to show you guys a game that I played in the Scotch game, just so you guys would be able to see how these ideas can be applied in a real game. Alright guys, so one of the best ways to learn to play a new opening is by using chess.com's play a new opening feature. They've got practice, and you can pick your e4 opening or d4 opening. Here we've picked the Scotch game, and we're going to play as white. And we're going to play about an intermediate level, so 1200 is the level of opponent we're going to play against, so the computer will emulate that level of opponent. And here we go. So in this position it's our move, and we're going to play the best move here, knight takes d4. And our opponent has given us this check, bishop b4, which is an interesting one. We can block it with our bishop, or we can play this nice move c3, which I like. It supports our knight as well as creating an immediate threat in the bishop. And opponent drops their bishop to c5. We're going to develop our dark squared bishop to support the knight. Alright, and the opponent has decided to drop back his bishop as well. We're going to continue by creating more pressure with the move bishop to c4, very flexible move. And here we've been given an opportunity to have two pawns in the center of the board. We can also develop our bishop to the center of the board and create an attack like this if we'd like to. So we have a few different options. Here I like the idea of taking with the pawn. That way our knight can come out. Alright, and here our opponent has developed their queen to h4, creating an attack on our e4 pawn. So we're going to defend the e4 pawn. Yeah, and the bot moves instantly, but we're going to take our time in a lot of these positions if we can. Here we have a few different options. One option I really like is developing our queen. Our queen really isn't in the game right now. Our queen could be doing a little bit more. Our queen can develop to b3 here, where it's going to be creating pressure against this f7 pawn. And opponent's queen drops back to defend the f7 pawn. Very nice move. And here now we are going to have the opportunity to have our knight jump out to d5. Now there's no longer any threat. Alright. And we have a few options here. First of all, I like the idea of taking this bishop, leaving ourselves with the bishop pair, which is a nice advantage. And our opponent decides to give us a check. Do we have to do anything to respond to this check? Well, let's see. Well, we can just castle. Actually, not castle. We can move our king over, or we can drop our bishop back like this. I like the idea of dropping the bishop back, forcing the queen to move. The queen's going to take, we can take this pawn first, and then we can exchange some more pieces. I really like this position so far. We are being able to win a pawn here, and we can also damage black's pawn structure a lot with the next move, which to me, I'm thinking the best move is likely going to be this queen takes b6 going into an endgame. And we can drop our bishop back, or we can even exchange it if we'd like. Many options. I like this bishop here. Frees up our rook. And yeah, our opponent is kind of making some very weak moves here, not counting the pawns and counting the attackers and defenders here. King has stepped into the line of sight of our bishop, so we have a few different options. We can take like this, or we can advance our pawn and then secure it. I think advancing our pawn might be a little bit too much. King is pretty safe, and this pawn is going to be easy to win. So let's just capture. An opponent has to move their king, of course. And now we can drive this pawn all the way up to c7. We're going to exchange pieces here and slide our rook over. And we can continue to defend. And then we'll drop our bishop back. Alright, and this pawn is very well defended at this point, which I really like. Alright. And there are a few defenders on this square, so the promotion square is covered. One thing we want to do here is try our best to win some pieces tactically here. I think there's a tactical combination that would be nice to play. And let's be very careful before we do any of it. First thing I see is we can capture the knight here. King will take. Then we can promote. And then if he takes and takes, we're up a full piece. And we can create some lift and we'll be winning the game. What else can we do? We can take our time here. First by cutting off the piece. And let's knock this knight away. I'm liking just securing the pawn here. Our bishop come in like this. And let's lift our rook here. Rook will be more effective on the file right here. What's our next move? Now here we've got a very nice position. Two passed pawns, ready to promote. How are we going to get them to promote? Well, let's first weigh our options. Opponent, does they have any nice knight moves that are going to distract our rooks? No. What I want to do is play a very nice rook over to d2 first. We'll go back and forth here for a second. Here our opponent takes, and here we can just promote. It's not a big deal. And this position is becoming very, very simple to play. We just need to be very cautious about making sure our advantage is stable. We win the pawn here. And bring our king up. And bring our rook over. And there's checkmate. So we saw that in this position it was very easy for us to just convert it once we got up a pawn. But let's go back to the beginning of the opening. This opening is very solid. We're able to develop our pieces very strongly and win a game based on tactics and capitalizing on our advantages when we had them. Here we were able to establish our 2 strong bishops. We got some passed pawns, and we were able to force an advantage by using those passed pawns to threaten promotion, advancing our agenda piece by piece, and then once we were able to promote, we got a decisive material advantage. And from there, it was just a matter of conversion, hunting down all the pawns, and eventually our opponent was faced with trading off the rook or checkmate, and they decided to go for checkmate. So alright, I appreciate you guys for watching this video, and I hope you have a good day. See ya.